Product that you're going to have a product that has 7 steps. So what this diagram is really speaking to is this idea of siloed teams. On the left-hand side, we have the siloed teams, but a better way to think about this might be to take a step back and ask, what's my product? And bring together the team members that I need to deliver that product. So you can see on the left-hand side, we have all the gray people work together, all the red people working together. But on the right-hand side, we've taken a step back and we've said, okay, our product is the website, right? Maybe we need content writers and SQL people and back-end developers and front-end designers. And those people need to work together so that we're not having to hand work off from team to team to team to team, but we're all working on the same product. Or another way, since I'm a little bit visual in nature, another way to think about this is imagine for a moment that my organization is delivering a box in this example, right? We're our present. A lot of organizations cut that present up. So this team is delivering the little corner and that team is delivering the top corner and we're delivering the sliver in the middle. And what happens when you do that is in order to get anything done, we're requesting work from different teams. So, the corner people wants to make a change to the size of the box. Well, they've got to request work from this team and this team has to request work from that team. And pretty soon we're all on each other's backlogs. So, some symptoms of this are pretty common, right? Are you constantly, how do you know if you're siloed? Right? Are you constantly waiting for work from another team? So I'm going to ask the chat. Are you waiting? Are you right now? Is your work waiting for input from other teams? Let me see if we get some chats coming through here. Are you waiting for somebody else in your team? We got somebody saying, yes, we're waiting. Now, at times it pops up. So yes, got a couple yeses here. I'm not saying that you should never have to request work from someone else, right? Of course, no matter how well defined your product is, dependencies, right? But if it's all the time, if 30% of your work is waiting for somebody else, that's a problem. So this is dependencies. Dependencies are the killer of value delivery. So, and the more people you throw at it, which is the common solution, the worse it actually gets. Like if I've got a team of 30 people and I'm constantly waiting on somebody else for dependencies and that's slowing my value delivery, just throwing more people at my team doesn't really solve the problem. Let me ask a different question. To get a real, let's imagine you've got an initiative at your company, right? And it's really important for the organization to deliver that thing. And you want to get a sense of how it's going. How many people do you have to go to get that sense? Is it more than one? Usually. Let's get some chats going on here. Are you having to ask for status from multiple people? No, okay. Dependencies on the product times, the driver, not a lot. Okay, so that's good. That's a good sign, actually. Then you may not be overly siloed, okay? Or it could be that you're just looking at your piece of the puzzle, right? It's hard to say. But larger initiatives, are we having to request work from other teams? Do you rely on program increment meetings to manage dependencies? Is another possible sign of too siloed. Okay, so some of the symptoms, right? Some of the common symptoms of having teams that are too siloed are a lack of a whole product focus, right? Instead of, back to that analogy with the box, I'm trying to deliver something. Instead of asking, how's the box coming along? I'm asking, how's the corner of that box coming along? So we're not really focusing on the whole product. It could be fragmented delivery. That top corner is rocking the house. That thing's solid diamond. And the bottom half or the middle is just cardboard, right? Or another way to put this, we're delivering a car. The engine is not working, but those windows are touch screen. So this fragmented delivery, dependencies slowing you down. It's a really common and the most frustrating of these. The siloed teams. High work in progress actually is a sign that you may be too siloed. Now, there could be a lot of causes for that, actually. It could be that you're just not managing your work in progress. But a lot of teams deal with the silos by, I can't start that, so I can't start that, I can't start that. Well, I'll just have to, I'm blocked, I'm blocked, I'm blocked. So I'll have to pick something else up. So you wind up with a lot of high work in progress sometimes if you have two silos. Where you're overcommitting maybe could be a sign of this issue. You think you'll be able to get it done, but God, those dependencies just get you every time. For example, conflicting priorities, maybe not having a roadmap that's aligned can be a sign of this. So lots of signs that could happen from this. I want to tell a little story that I think will make the point for this. So I was working with a company some years ago. It doesn't matter what the company was, but they processed data. And they decided to go Agile, which was great. But when they went Agile, they siloed their teams. So they thought that specialization would be the way to go. So they had one team that focused on loading the data, and another team that focused on matching some of the data, and another team that focused on actually processing the data, and another team that focused on creating invoices for processing the data, and another team that focused on bugs, and another team that focused on, just lots of different focuses. And each one of those teams had a product owner. And the idea was to really build up skills in each one of these different areas. So we would have experts at loading the data and experts at creating invoices for processing the data. So that was the idea. And at first, when they went Agile, it was good. It was a good experience. The empowerment went up. The teams felt really that they owned the quality. But almost immediately, things started to slow down. And what would happen is, in order to get anything done, Team A would have to request work from Team B. And Team C would have to request work from Team A. And what happened is value delivery actually ground to a halt. Maybe not a halt, but it got very frustrating. We're constantly waiting. And each one of these teams had their own product owner and their own list of things to do. And so each one of those product owners had their own priorities, and we were not aligned. And in order to get aligned, we did a lot of things like giving executive feedback on what should be the priorities. And we tried portfolio management. This is our list of priorities, but none of that worked, because ultimately every product owner had for their piece of the puzzle what we're working on. And we really did not have, despite all the portfolio management in the world, a real, this is our priority for everyone. There was just a lack of buy-in. So what we did was, they brought me in and they said, should we just stop using Agile? This is not really, this is difficult. And so I said, did an analysis, and I came and I listened to the teams, and I talked to the people on the teams, and did a lot of investigation. And then I met with leadership, and I said, I think we need to take a step back and ask, what are your products? What are you actually trying to deliver here? And so, we did some meetings, we had some conversations, and it turns out they really just had two products. They had one product, which was processing the data, and another product, which was CRM, people calling in and asking questions about their data. And so we identified two product owners, one product owner for the data processing and one for the CRM. And we asked those teams to self-organize. We allowed them to self-organize. And so there were some steps that happened here. We redefined the products. We established a single product owner. We established a single product vision. We allowed the teams to self-organize so that any team could pull any work for the data team, and any team could pull any work for the CRM team. So I'm just going to look at the data team now. So the teams were allowed to self-organize. They relaunched, and they started sprinting with a single product owner, a single vision, and a single product backlog. Within 3 months, throughput, which is not the best measure of success, but still went up by 300%, because we're not waiting on what we're all working on the same priorities. We're talking to each other. So we also adopted the Nexus scaling framework, but we're talking to each other. What are we trying to accomplish? Does anyone have dependencies? So rather than the product owner requesting work from each other, the whole team's talking about, well, how can we resolve this dependency? Who needs to do what first? Let's talk. Let's get this done. So throughput increased by 300%. But more important than that, customer satisfaction went up by 200%. 20%. 200% would be amazing, but 20%. Morale went up by 7 points, team morale. And lead time went down by 30%. So it was dramatically successful in a very short amount of time because we're all working on the same thing. We're all focused on the same thing. And oh my goodness, we're talking to each other. So it was hugely impactful. And I want to zoom over here and think about this for a minute. The reason companies, and this company in particular, the reason a lot of companies create silos because they want to be efficient. They want to make sure everybody's busy and everybody's working at full capacity. So the thought is that the silos will work. But the problem I have with this is the reason they adopt Agile has nothing to do with efficiency. And that isn't even efficient anyways. We're going to come back to that point. But when people adopt Agile, there's a State of Agile report that goes out, which I'm a huge fan of. Can't wait to see the latest one. But State of Agile report, stateofagile.com, they do a survey, and it is global, and they survey small companies, medium companies, large companies, and it's a nice global report. It's the longest running report of its kind. And for 10 straight years, the number one reason that people adopt, or at least tied for first, the number one reason people adopt Agile or companies adopt Agile is to deliver value sooner. And yet, the top reasons why they're not satisfied with their Agile transformation is legacy systems. It's not being used consistently, but silos comes up as the fourth most popular reason they're not satisfied. And then second from last in the top 10 is lack of visibility. So those to me, lack of visibility on dependencies, which both of those really have to do with silos. So if you look at what they're not satisfied with, and you add those number 4 and the ninth one up, if you add those up, that's 49%. That's actually the real number one reason why we're not satisfied with our Agile implementation is siloed teams causing dependencies. So this is hugely impactful. And this is what I'm also seeing in my own practice. So I went and did a little bit of consulting for a bank, and we asked the teams, we did a survey, what are you not satisfied with? And it was dependencies. Number one, dependencies. And even people mentioned silos as well, and overcommitting, right? That came up as a comment earlier, conflicting priorities. So this is a huge problem in the industry. This is a problem that we can't just put a Band-Aid on this, right? We can't scale our way out of failing to define products. We need to get to the root cause of this. And I'm going to turn my attention back to, this image may not resonate with you, but back in, I think it was 1986, before Agile was a word, before Scrum was created as a framework, there was this article that was written. It was called The New Product Development Game. And in this article, he talks about, or he contrasts this idea of a waterfall approach, a traditional approach for value delivery, and what we need. And he was saying, in this new game of product development, a waterfall approach where we hand work from this team to that team, to that team, to that team, to that team, just does not work. What we need is something more like rugby, where we've got a group of cross-functional teams, and they're working together, people with different skills working together to move the ball across the field. They're passing it back and forth, but they're working together. What was central to that article was people with different skills, cross-functional teams. And when we say cross-functional, what do we mean? Because it's an awful lot of syllables, right? What we mean is we have all the skills we need to deliver that thing, right? If it's a website, it's UI, it's the back-end people, it's maybe the designers. But how do you know what you need, right? You have to first take a step back and ask, what is my product? Now, every company may have many products. Like there may be small products in the company, there may be big products in the company, but the point of this is to not just fall into it. You gotta take a step back and actually ask the question, what are our products? And how do you know what those products are? Well, it's taking a step back and asking, what are they? How big do we draw that product box? Maybe you do have a platform. Maybe you are Microsoft Office, right? And they've got kind of the platform, which is Office. And they may have products that are part of that. So for example, I've got that's funny. I have the icons are not with the right things. Sorry, Microsoft. But they've got Microsoft Office, and they may have a product owner for the Office platform and a product owner for Microsoft and a product owner for Microsoft Word. And they may also have additional product owners within that. But the point is that our product, or are we a bunch of little products within our organization? For example, the Amazon website actually defines their products very narrowly on purpose. So for example, the login page is a product. The reviews are a product. You may have a larger product, but whatever you do, take a step back and ask, what is our product? And do it on purpose. So the way there's lots of different ways to define products. The way I personally love to do it is a workshop where we bring together the executives, the middle management. It could be, people within the company, but whoever your experts are, and we workshop it. And we start by asking the question, who's my customer, right? Who are our customers? And just that question, you think it's easy, but it may not be. Imagine, for example, your health insurance. Well, who are your customers? Is it the doctors, or is it the people receiving the care, or is it the nurses? So just even asking who are my customers can be a complicated question. Amazon, I'm making this up a little bit because I've never worked at Amazon, but Amazon, who are our customers? Is it the people who are buying the product, or is it the people who are selling products on Amazon, right? I don't know. So taking that step back and asking, who are my customers? And from there, you ask, what are the pains that they're experiencing? And what are the gains that they're looking for from my product? And that alone can take you quite a bit of time. I mean, that's like half a day right there. And then after that half a day, what are pain relievers? What are we doing that provides a value to our customers, or our gain enhancers, if you want to think about it a slightly different way? And from there, that again, another half day. And at the end of that, okay, what are the services that we're providing to them? And group those, right? Really just, these belong together. These belong together. These belong together. And that is your products. And then having a conversation, okay, does this make sense? Do our groupings make sense? Do we have duplication? Which one of these products is most important? So coming back up to this little image of here, right? This product, does it make sense now? Does this product make sense? How big you draw that product box also should depend on dependencies, right? So for example, imagine this top right product is a website. For the website people, I may need front-end designers. I may need back-end designers. But do I have a dependency every day on the servers? No, maybe not. So maybe the server team is separate. So putting some thought into what makes sense, aligning around the customer, but also thinking about what are the resources that we need to deliver that product. So that's one way to define your products. Another way to define your products is customer journey mapping. People love to do this one. This is a great one, where you think about what are the steps that we take to deliver value to our customers. So if it is a website, people come to the website, right? They shop. What is their journey? They place an order. Then what do? We go to fulfillment. And so taking that journey and mapping out what are the steps that we take to deliver value to our customers can be a way to do that. You could also use capability mapping is another way to think about that. However you do it, whatever makes sense in your context, because each one of those tools makes sense in a different context. But being thoughtful. These are the left and right limits of our product because, and as I was saying earlier, you may wind up with the platform. You may wind up with very narrowly defined products. But if you do very narrowly defined products, understand that you're going to have solid DevOps. If you do a larger product, understand that you're going to need to have a solid, really strong product owner. The point of this, all of this, is whatever you do, do it on purpose and with intention. Don't just fall into it, as I was saying earlier, because my boss is the SQL person, I'm going to be on the SQL team. You're creating a nightmare for yourself when you just kind of unintentionally fall into this. But taking that step back and thinking about what are our products, who do I need to deliver those products, is such a value. In my opinion, I think this is one of the it is, in fact, the biggest problem facing our industry today. And that bears out, if you go back to the state of Agile, what are the things that we're the most frustrated with? It's dependencies. That's the thing that's killing value delivery. And a lot of organizations try to Band-Aid over that by adopting a scaling method. Well, let's just make them talk at least once a quarter. Let's let them map out their dependencies at least once a quarter. And that's a Band-Aid. Why don't we actually take a step back and let the people talk to each other the way it was intended in the new product development game? Cross-functionality is mentioned also in the Agile Manifesto. It's mentioned in the Scrum framework. Cross-functionality depends on, first and foremost, asking, what is it that I'm trying to deliver? Before I can have a cross-functional team, I need to know what is it I'm trying to deliver. And only then can I know who is it that I need to deliver that thing. So cross-functionality presupposes I have defined my products. So when you think about this, the very first thing that you need to do is define your products. It can be, as I said, I personally am comfortable with the idea of starting with your customers, pains and gains. What are our pain relievers, gain enhancers? And from there, what are the services, and group them. I think that's a great way to do it. But depending on your context, if you already have been siloed for a long time, you have a problem, right? Your problem is that the product is already disjointed. And so you may need to do capability mapping to really unwind this thing. So your solution approach for defining products will depend on your unique context. Journey mapping or capabilities, or a combination of all of those. You may need to really put some thought into this. This is not an easy thing, defining those products, but you really have to go through that question. Once you define those products, at that point, you can think about building the teams. Okay, so we've defined our products. Who do we need to deliver that product? Do we need SQL people, content writers, designers? Who are the people we need, and what kind of investment are we willing to make in these products? Do we need 30 people? Or are we just willing to commit 10? So building out those teams. Then once you've identified your resources, working with the managers of those teams, what are the left and right limits for the product? What I mean by that is, what are our constraints within which we're going to allow those teams to self-organize? So if you're going to let them self-organize, right, you can establish the rules. We're going to allow you to have up to 5 people per team. Every team has to have a mix of entry-level people or experienced people. So building out those teams and preparing them to self-organize. Letting them self-organize is a very exciting process. It can be a half-hour meeting. I'm sorry, half-hour. What was I talking about? What I meant to say was a 4-hour meeting is usually. And let them self-organize. Let them pick their teams. So a self-organization session might start off with a presentation from leadership that says, we're going to let you self-organize. And then you might bring your product owner up, and the product owner might say, here's our vision for the product. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's our customers. Here's their pains. Here's their gains. This is why we're doing this. So giving that context. What's our goal for this product? What are some of our top features? Do we have any upcoming milestones for this product? So giving them context, and then letting them understand what are the guardrails within which we're going to allow you to self-organize. No more than 5 per team. Every team has to have a mix of skills, and then letting them self-organize and come up with those structures that they think will make the most sense for them, and having a discussion about that, and then letting people pick their names. So there's an art to this, right? And once you've let them self-organize, get started. Try it. See how it goes. Inspect and adapt your structure, inspect and adapt your product itself, and learn as you go. So using that Scrum framework to drive, is this working? Are we talking to each other enough? Is the product working? It is a transformational experience when you do take a step back and define those products. When you allow the teams who need to talk to each other and be part of the same team. And letting them sprint and letting them learn as they go. So I want to pause and ask, has anyone done this? Has anyone been part of a product definition or a self-organization session? And what were your thoughts on that? Okay, I got a few coming in here. Okay. So one person had a question. Siloed teams, does it mean interaction by one Agile to another Agile team? I've seen mostly siloed challenges arise due to not the entire organization challenge, especially mid or large hybrids. Okay, so siloed teams, what I mean by that is, and it can be caused by not everyone has transformed to Agile, so that is true. What I mean by siloed teams is back up at this. Let me come up to this slide of here. Okay, right here. Oops, a little too far. A lot of organizations cut their teams horizontally. So instead of having this idea of a team includes UI people, service people, middleware people, they say that I've got a team that's just UI, and I've got a team that's just SQL, and I've got a team that just does program the website, for example. That's what I mean by siloed teams. And it's siloed by technology or siloed by solution approach. Instead of allowing those people to work together, you're sort of putting up walls between the different teams. And that's what I think causes a lot of problems for people. Okay, so I do have one person has says that that's how I fixed my last org. Oh, very nice. So the question was back to, I asked a question a minute ago, has anyone actually done this? And we do have one person, yes, that's how I fixed my last org. Fantastic, that's great. And we have somebody who's making comment about Conway's Law. So Conway's Law, I want to build on that for a moment. This is straight from this, what I'm about to say is straight off of Wikipedia. Conway's Law, they give an example of if you were to build a compiler and you had structured your team so that there's 6 or however many it was, different teams working on that compiler, you're going to wind up with a compiler that has 6 steps. And tragically, I've seen organizations do this where they've, not a compiler particularly, but whatever they're doing, they've siloed their teams and they've had them siloed that way for years. And so it's really difficult to unpack that now because they've got so many little teams. And the way to unpack that is slowly, right? Some teams cannot just take a step back and leap into products, but they need to slowly, let's bring these two together and let them work for a year. And let's bring a little bit more and a little bit more. So if your entire organization has created a giant compiler with 1 million steps, you may need to unpack that a little bit slower than other teams, but that's a thought. So we have one other person who says, having a self-organization was scary at first by upper management, but turned out exceptionally well. Self-organization is wonderful. It's even better we can self-organize into a cross-functional team, but even if you have to self-organize just within those silos, it's better than not. When you self-organize, were you able to do cross-functional teams? It looks like somebody was. And siloed can be by function horizontally, but can also be by incorrectly organizing cross-functional teams. Interesting, very interesting. That's a great point. If you don't do a nice job of defining your products, you can have a cross-functional team that's not delivering anything of value. So being very, that was a very interesting comment by somebody there. Then we have, how do you balance the need for specialization? Great question, with the need for cross-functional product teams. So that is an excellent question. I'm going to go back up here. I believe it was up here. Okay, maybe it's around here somewhere. Here we are. I'm going to repeat the question. How do you balance the need for specialization with the need for cross-functional product teams? So I'm going to use an example of, let's imagine this product here on the right is a website, right? And they've got content writers, developers, back-end developers. The question is the security folks, or let's say a different way, are the security folks part of the product team, or are they independently and providing oversights for all the products? This is a question that you should make based on dependencies. What I mean by that is, do I need a security expert every other sprint, or do I need them every sprint, or frequently enough? If I need them frequently enough, maybe even 30% of the time I need them, or 70% of the time I need them, then they should be on the team. If I'm not consulting a security expert often enough, maybe they are a separate team. So this has to be done, but how big you draw that product box depends on dependencies. How frequently am I consulting them? Let me put this a slightly different way. If I'm consulting them, I'm going to make this number up. There's no hard line here. It's a squishy line. If I'm consulting them a lot of the time, maybe they should be on my team, but maybe they need to be a T-shaped person where they can do security, but also something else. So the question is, how big you draw that box depends on dependencies, and also the willingness to be a little bit cross-functional. Can they develop other skills? This is a squishy line that every company is going to have to decide upon for themselves. You want to eliminate as much as possible the need for someone to be on multiple teams, because that is actually wasteful. But you also want to, there's a lot of things that go into considering this. So this is something you almost just have to talk through case by case every time in my unique environment. We have another comment here. I think this problem is rooted in the underlying organizational strategy, project work versus product-based work. Yes, it is. Let's take a moment and dive into that. When we used to deliver things versus on projects, right? A project brings together people of different skills. It's a temporary endeavor with, a fixed start and a fixed end, and you bring together cross-functional people for that. Because you couldn't deliver a project any other way. You have to have people with different skills. But when people adopt Agile, they form these somewhat more permanent teams of product teams. They forget that you needed all these different people to deliver it. So when they go Agile, ironically, they forget about cross-functionality a lot of times. So I think that's an interesting thing. Now, there's different companies do different things and take different paths. So I'm not saying that shoe fits everyone, but it does fit a lot of people. One more question. I'm gonna check on time. I'd consider whether you can turn something like security into a reusable asset required by multiple other teams. So yes, that is a great comment. Yes, absolutely. I agree with that comment. One thing I want to caution about, though, is a lot of teams think, I don't know how to exactly word this quite right, but how big you draw that product box should depend upon dependencies. It's easy for me to think, well, my product, my skill is special. I should be my own internal facing product. And you can go crazy with that. And eventually you have a bunch of little products just by accident. Data, for example, is data its own separate product really internally at your company, or is it part of the product that you're offering to your customers? So when you're thinking about products, try and use your external customers lens. Do I need the data folks to deliver that thing? And is that something I need all the time? If yes, then they should probably be on your team. If it really is not necessary, then they can be separate. So there's this push and pull thing that happens where people kind of want to be, they feel that it's more glorious for them to be their own product. Be careful with that, right? Don't let that get out of hand. All right. So I think we're coming up on the end of the time. I think, okay, yep, that's it. That's other comments. Okay. So I want to kind of wrap up here a little bit with some key takeaways. When you're defining products, start with your customer. Who is my customer? What are their needs? What are their pains and gains? When you're thinking about your products, when you're asking that question, should they be part of the delivery team? Should they be part of the product team? Think about it from the customer's perspective. Do I need them to deliver that thing? So think outside in. Keep an open mind. This is not easy. You may not get it right. So inspect and adapt as you go and focus on what is the value that we're providing and who do we need to deliver that value. When companies go Agile, they go Agile to deliver value sooner. And yet they silo those teams, which actually delays value. And yet they think those siloed teams is more efficient, but it's not. It is not efficient to wait for work all the time. To have to submit a ticket from team A to team B to team C and to have to hand out work. You're actually chaining your teams. and limiting them. And what you think is efficient is actually not efficient. It might look efficient on paper for everyone to have a specialization, but it's actually more efficient to allow them to easily talk and easily collaborate with each other. So think about the communication structures that you're setting up. Am I putting walls up between my teams? And then just like Scrum, every product definition has to be applied in its unique situation. So Scrum is a framework, products are a framework. You need to inspect and adapt as you go. So however you define those products, be open to changing them. Not all the time. You have to get started a little bit and let it run, but the product itself may need to be evolved over time. So be open to change. We learn as we go. Empiricism is the superpower behind the Scrum framework. It's the idea that we're transparent about how it's going. We inspect often, and we're open to adapting and changing and learning as we go. So that spirit of experimentation, that spirit of openness and inspecting and adapting should be applied to products as well. So I do want to kind of wrap up here, and I want to say thank you all so much for your time. I greatly appreciate this, and I'm a huge fan of the Scrum Masters of the Universe and the conversation that you have in this forum. I think is valuable for you and for the larger Agile community. And I just want to close by saying that I hope to see you continue this conversation. Join us at Scrum Day. Our website is www.scrumday.org. It is scheduled for October 2nd in beautiful Madison, Wisconsin. We hope to see you there. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I'll toss the ball back to you.
Thank you so much for that. Are there any questions that we didn't get covered in the chat? Anybody want to take one last bite at the apple before Mary has to leave us?
And I'm gonna throw a second plug out there for Scrum Day, because I've gone the last 2 years and it's awesome. So don't miss that opportunity to join Mary and Madison, and I'll be there too.
Thank you so much. We're gonna do some fun things this year. You're gonna, I think it's gonna be really neat this year.
It's been really neat, so I can't wait.
So I see a question there that somebody said there seems to be an implied trade-off between delivering value sooner and maximizing the utilization of people, but it sounds like you would argue that's not the case. What I would argue is you're going to utilize people better when you let them talk to each other. So I think it's a false dichotomy, actually. I think when you remove those walls and let them collaborate, that they're going to be better utilized because they're not waiting to submit a ticket, and I'm not sitting there waiting to hear back from someone. I think they're better utilized when they're than when you let them talk to each other. And if you want to increase utilizing even further, you can let them learn other skills and be T-shaped. So I think it's a false dichotomy. Then we have, is there a virtual Scrum Day option? No, I just think there's value in the face-to-face communication. So I'm not going to do it again this year. I keep thinking about it, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I might though. I might someday. Worth the trip to Wisconsin. Yes, I think it's beautiful here. Beautiful here. And by the way, the reason I do it in October is because it's the most beautiful time of the year, in my opinion, in Wisconsin. You got the fall. I recommend you go to the Arboretum when you're here. And there's some really great restaurants. I've got them on my website, the restaurants I think you should try when you come out here. So check that out. It's on FAQs.
I get cold just thinking about that.
You might want to bring a light jacket for the fall, but it's iffy. And that's why it's a little earlier this year, because I thought, well, it was a little cold, so I think I'll do it a little earlier.
Oh, I live in Florida. I'm bringing a heavy winter coat in October.
Well, didn't you have snow on the ground, Joe? I mean,
there was almost 12 inches in the Panhandle a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it was an environmental disaster.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to do well, and the birds too. It's a real problem. Yeah, the alligators will actually live through it because they're cold-blooded. Hey, I want to do a public service announcement. Next Friday at Scrum Masters of the Universe, we are going to have a talk on what the Corps calls leading Marines, Tech calls agility. So please join us at noon Eastern for that next Friday, and we are going to welcome our guest, Tanner Wortham.
That sounds awesome.
All right. If there are no other questions, we can give you a few minutes back. Anybody else going once for questions for Mary? Going 2 times. All right, going 3 times. Mary, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate this talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Enjoyed
everybody.
it.
Yep.
Thanks to
Great
everybody
weekend.
for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye.